This
academic area,
conference will now be recorded.
or if you're from an academic area, we want to know what you're pursuing, and if you're working currently, we want to know your profession and the field in which you're working. So you can speak it out or type the same in the chat box so that we all can get the most out of this session. Okay, I'm gonna repeat that. Um, Guys, I need a quick introduction about you, about where you guys are working or which field you guys are working and your current profession, so that I can answer your questions in a better way and tailor this discussion, and we can get most out of this discussion today. You can speak out with your name and profession and your field, your working field, or else type the same in the chat box. Okay, so far I've received a response from only one person, so I'm waiting for others for a small introduction before we kickstart the session. Okay, fine. Thanks for joining, guys. Thanks for taking time out of this Sunday evening and joining this call. So the object of the session is to make you familiarize with the course curriculum that we're offering at SSB, and also to answer any questions about data science in general if you have any. About the learning sources or the job prospects in the data science field, etc. So if you have any questions, as we go along with the session, you can type in the chat box, or just stop me and ask immediately. Okay. And also at the end of the session, we'll have a short Q&A session also. So if you have any questions, specific to the field you're working on, or anything specific to your work, you can still ask them, and I'll try to answer that accordingly. Okay, with that said, we'll jump into the session. Yeah, I hope everyone is able to see the screen. Like I said, the object of the session is to explain you about the curriculum of the course that we're offering, and also give you a will try to give you a brief introduction about data science in general, and you know uh, the break the jargons in this field into pieces for you to understand. Okay. So why data science, and why machine learning? Okay, why are we using data science, and why is there so much hype about data science? So previously, before AI came into boom in the last few years, so mostly we were what we using were uh, what we were using in AI is mostly a bunch of if-else statements, or rules or conditions that we use to make the machines do the task that we do. Okay, so let's take an example to explain this in a better way. So let's say you have a fitness tracker. Okay, so based on the speed of the movement, or the speed of your uh, the rate of change of your position, we're trying to understand if you're walking or running or biking, or doing any other activity. Okay, so in that case, with just some simple general knowledge, we can write a rule like speed is less than 4, it means that walking. Okay, and if speed is more than 4 and less than 12, it can be called as running, or else it's called biking. Okay, so other than this, you won't be able to predict if you're doing any other activity like golfing or playing badminton, etc. Okay, so this is what used to be happening in traditional programming before the AI came into boom. So these conditional statements, a bunch of conditional statements were used to be called AI. So what happens in traditional programming is you give a bunch of data and a set of rules, and by applying these rules, your machine will give you answers. So in this case, if you input speed of the person, you'll get if he is walking or running or biking. That's all we could do. So, but once we started using machine learning, or once we started applying the machine learning for practical purposes, how it changed is we what we do now is we give both data and answers from the data that we have collected throughout a time, the historical data, and the machine will be able to come up with new set of rules which can do the tasks much beyond the human knowledge. Okay, so no, it's not just running, walking, or biking. So even in playing golf and badminton, there are certain patterns of our movement which machine can track, but which cannot be encoded in a set of if else conditions. So now mission is able to look at your historical data, which is manually tagged as walking or running according to the speed. And now, if you input this data and answers to machine learning, it will be able to come up with a new set of rules which can be applied for future use. So let's see what are the jargons that we use every day in this field. Okay, so there are things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, data science. So we hear these words every day. So what actually these jargons mean? So, what is artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence, or AI, is what allows the machines. to act like humans by replicating their behavior and nature. Okay, so AI, what AI does is it replicates our actions, or it even does the tasks which we cannot do as humans. Okay, so that is artificial intelligence. So the name itself says the thing. And what is machine learning? Machine learning is just a subset of the field called AI. It gives a set of procedures or algorithms for the machine to observe the patterns in the data and make predictions in the new data that we give it. And deep learning is just another subset of machine learning, where the the way in which machine extracts the patterns in the data is different from what we have in machine learning. So we'll see what that is now. So if you look at this chart, we have artificial intelligence at the top, and the machine learning is a subset of it, and the deep learning becomes another subset of machine learning. Okay, and data science is more or less like a skill which is not any particular field of science. Okay? Deep learning and machine learning and AI are fields in science, but data science is more of a skill which uses all these fields and also other things. So if you look at this chart here, we have data science. Is a culmination of all these skills. Okay, so we need both maths and statistics. We also need a bit of coding and also some domain and business knowledge about the data. So this deals more about the data. Okay, if you don't have knowledge on how to use the data, you can't put it to the right use, or you can't get most of the data. In data science, we have other than machine learning and artificial intelligence, we have things like visualizing the data, mining the data, and other things like recommendation engines, etc., that we build, which are also part of data science, but may not be classified as either part of machine learning or artificial intelligence. Okay. So data science is more about the skill of using machine learning or AI to build data products. I hope it is clear so far. If you are not able to understand anything, or if you feel that you're missing something, you can immediately call me out, and I'll try to explain it again. So why there is so much hype about data science? Okay, where data science is creating its impression. Okay, so almost every company uses data science these days in almost every sector. Here we have a bunch of examples where we have travel, marketing, healthcare, social media, sales, etc. So I'll just try to explain you how it's used in each sector. In travel sector, data science is being used to adjust flight fares or dynamic pricing of flights, predicting flight delays based on different parameters. Okay, and when it comes to marketing, we have predicting lifetime value of customer. Okay, when you onboard a customer, you can predict how much business you're going to make with this customer, and how long this customer is going to be with you, which comes under churn prediction, which means that when your customer is going to leave you, or to go with your competitor or leave your business. Then we have cross selling and upselling in marketing. When it comes to healthcare, we have disease prediction, okay, and medication effectiveness. And nowadays data science and particularly deep learning is being used to identify breast cancer from tissue images, etc. Also. And when it comes to social media, we have sentiment analysis. Okay, and in digital marketing also data science is being used. Okay, you might have observed already that if you have searched for a product or for a particular product on Amazon, you'll be seeing a lot of ads about that product or similar products in your Instagram or Facebook feed. Okay, so AI, uh, a huge application of AI is is being done in this area, particularly targeting the customers with digital marketing. And then we have sales where we have based on spending patterns, banks or companies are trying to give us different types of discounts. Okay, and demand and supply forecasting is what sales people do using data science in a better way. And then we have automation where nowadays we're seeing several drones being used. Okay, and self-driving cars like Tesla, etc. This comes under the automation sector. And in credit and insurance, we have claims prediction. Okay, so if a claim can be issued or not, uh, is what an AI algorithm can tell you if you input different parameters about the claim being made. And also we have fraud and risk detection in this sector. In machine learning, we have two different type of learning algorithms. Okay, one is supervised learning and the second is unsupervised learning. So we'll see what's the difference between these two. Okay? So in supervised learning, the name itself says that the machine will learn in the supervision of a human. Okay, what it means that you have to give the machine a set of data and also a tag specifying what the data is all about. Okay. So the the task of mission here is to understand different patterns in the data uh, with respect to the tag which is assigned to the data. Okay. In unsupervised, what happens is the machine will learn or try to segregate your data into different groups based on the similarity in the data without any previous input from the human or without any supervision of human. Okay, we'll see an example here. In supervised learning, what we generally do is, let's say we're trying to identify which animal is present in an image. Okay. So what we typically do is we provide a set of images to the machine, to the computer, and we say which animal is what. Okay, so in this image we label this image as a duck. Okay, and we label this image, okay, as not duck, and we pass these images through a supervised learning algorithm, and the machine will be trying to understand the patterns in the data. Okay, things like length of the beak, etc., to differentiate duck and a not duck animal. So this is how we'll be building our machine learning algorithms or machine learning models, which we'll be using in the future. Like if you pass a new image to this predictive model, your machine learning model, it will be able to identify if it's a duck or not. Okay. So this is how supervised learning algorithm works. So whereas in case of unsupervised learning algorithm, what happens is we'll be giving a set of images to the machine, and the machine will be able to segregate into three different groups based on similarities in the data. Okay, so let's say in this group there are similar features like having two legs and a long beak. So this can be segregated as a different group. Okay, so remember that we didn't give any labels to this data. Okay, like we did in the supervised case. So the machine won't be able to tell you which animal exactly this is, but it will just give you three different groups, and based by looking at the image, you can label them as a duck group, uh, etc. Okay. So in real life, when it comes to application of data science, there are different steps involved, or there are different stages in a data science project life cycle. Okay. So it all starts from understanding your problem that you're trying to solve using machine learning, and then to gather data, which helps you in solving that problem. Okay, this is more specific to the domain. Then what comes is called as exploring data. Okay, so before exploring data, you will also do a bit of cleaning on the data. Okay, because in real life you need a lot of cleaning in the data, because mostly in real life data is messy and very unstructured way. So then what you do is you explore the data to find different patterns in the data, just to analyze the trivial parameters about the data. So we'll talk more about this later. Okay. And then you prepare the data. Okay, when I say prepare the data, you'll try to extract the useful columns from your data, which we'll be using to build your machine learning model. So then you'll build, uh, train your model, and then you'll evaluate model how good your model is. So once you're satisfied with your model performance, you'll be deploying your data. Okay, so by refining your model, you'll be changing your hyperparameters, or let's just say some characteristics of a machine learning model that you'll be changing to see if the performance is getting better. So then you'll be deploying your model to production, or for the end users. So this is how data science project life cycle goes. Okay, and we'll be discussing how our curriculum is built according to this life cycle. Okay, before going to the curriculum, I just want to know if anyone has any questions about the things we've discussed so far, and it would be great, if you could tell me about your current working experience, which field you're working in, so that we can answer questions in a better way. So, any questions so far, guys, on the introduction of data science? If you are curious about application of data science in the field you're working, or if you are curious about how you can apply data science in your profession, in your current job role, you can ask the same as well, and I'll try to answer as part of this session. And if you're a student, and if you're wondering how job prospects will be in data science area once you pass out, you can ask about the same thing as well. So we'll jump into the curriculum of the course. Okay. So the objective of this call is to explain you about the curriculum, and also to show you how we do things at SSB, and how our teaching style would be. Okay, and the expectations from you, and to explain you what sets us apart from the other courses. So you can look at this chart. Uh, so in this entire 100-hour course, okay, so the initial estimation for the course is 100 hours, because it might be extended by 10 15 hours, based on how we go along with the course. So initially the estimation is 100 hours, and out of that, almost 50 to 60% will go into learning machine learning and deep learning algorithms. Okay, and the other 40% is divided into getting the basics right, to learn this machine learning algorithms, which is probability and statistics. And to implement this machine learning algorithms, we'll be using Python predominantly. So we'll be learning Python also as part of basics, and some trivial skills that we need to play with the data, like exploratory data analysis and visualizing data before going into making machine learning models. And then we also have two modules for NLP and computer vision in the end. So so this is a detailed breakup of the curriculum. So in the beginning of the course, we'll be having a module for introduction to statistics and linear algebra, where we'll be trying to understand what descriptive statistics and inferential statistics are. And then in the end, we'll try to see what how linear algebra helps in understanding and implementing your machine learning algorithms. So then we have programming R.
Hello, are you presenting anything?
Hello. Sorry.
Are you sharing anything?
Yes, just a second. Okay, sorry for that. So I'll just quickly go back to the beginning again. So like I was saying, as part of the curriculum, so initially we'll be having a statistics and linear algebra module, and you can see the topics on the screen, where we have descriptive and inferential statistics, and we'll understand why we need statistics basics to understand the machine learning algorithms. Then we have linear algebra, where we'll be doing matrix operations, etc., etc. So it's basically extension of what we have learned in our undergraduate programs. And then we have programming in R, where we have similar to any other programming language, we'll be trying to understand how to declare variables, and then we'll see different types of data structures in R. And then we'll try to write control statements, functions in R. And finally, we'll see visualizing data in R using different packages, and we'll be visualizing different types of charts in R. And then we have BI module, okay, where we'll be covering Alteryx, Tableau, and RShiny. So why we need BI module is, when you build a data science model, you need to explain to the end users how your business, how your machine learning algorithm performs, and how your results will be helpful to the business logic. Okay, so to explain that, you need to visualize the data, and you need to visualize the results that you get in a machine learning model. Okay, for that you need BI tools. So as part of that, we'll be seeing Alteryx, Tableau, and RShiny. In all these three, we'll be basically understanding how to fetch the data, and how to clean the data and then aggregate the data, and visualize data in different plots in all these tools. And in RShiny specifically, there is a feature of building a dashboard, and displaying the dashboard in a local server. So we'll be looking at that in RShiny. So then comes Python for data science. Okay, in this also we'll be seeing different data structures in Python, and then writing control statements, and then writing functions. And we'll be discussing uh, you know different some data structures which are predominantly used in the data science. And then we'll see how to make different visualizations in Python. Then we have something called as web scraping module, where we'll be trying to understand how to gather data from the internet, uh, using automation with Python. Okay, and then we have the core of this entire course, which is machine learning and AI, where we'll try to understand what supervised and unsupervised algorithms are. Then, like I mentioned before, these are the different steps in our data science project. Okay. So we'll be seeing how to clean the data initially, and then we'll see exploratory data analysis on our data, and then what we hear is called as regression models and classification methods. Okay, so let me try to explain you regression and classification, in a simple way. So regression means, when you're trying to predict something, which is numerical. Okay, let's say, using experience in years, you're trying to predict the salary of a person. Okay, here salary is a continuous column, like it's a numerical column. So when you're trying to predict that, it's called as a regression problem. Okay, and when you're trying to classify something, okay, classify your data into multiple groups, it's called a classification problem. Okay, so we've seen a example before on duck and other animals segregation. uh, we also use email classifier on Gmail all the time to classify if a mail is spam or not. Okay, so that's why it's being put into use. So those are called classification problems. So we'll be seeing what kind of machine learning algorithms we have for regression and classification. And as part of this, we'll be learning about a package called Flask, which helps us in building small APIs and deploying in your local network to for others to make predictions using a machine learning algorithm. And then we'll be using small web tools using Plotly and Dash packages. After that, as part of deep learning module, okay, so we'll be trying to understand the basis of deep learning, okay, the origin of deep learning, how it evolved, and the inspiration from the nature. And then we'll see what kind of architectures we have in deep learning, different deep learning algorithms, and then applications in the real world, like face recognition and object recognition in images, etc. And after that, we have NLP module, where we'll be learning how to deal with the text data. Okay, reading the text data, gathering the text data, and then doing analysis on that, converting unstructured text data to structured text data. And then we have something called as feature extraction, where using different NLP techniques, we'll be converting text data into a structure or tabular form, and then apply different machine learning algorithms that we have learned before. And we'll see real world applications of NLP as well, like sentence classification. Okay, so you can, for example, you can classify whether a news article has a positive or negative sentiment using the title of the article. So we have such applications in text classification. We'll also look at text mining and text visualization. And at the end of NLP module, we'll also try to learn what kind of chatbot frameworks we have. Okay. How to chatbot is nothing but a conversational agent. Okay. Nowadays we see a chatbot at the bottom right of almost every website we use. Okay. So we'll try to understand what chatbots are, what kind of frameworks we have, and how to train a chatbot from scratch. And we can also use some pre-trained models for chatbots. So after that, we have image processing and computer vision module, where we'll try to understand how to deal with image data, where read images and process the images, find objects present in the images, apply different types of image processing algorithms for edge detection, foreground and background detection, object detection, tracking of objects, etc. And as part of computer vision applications, we'll see uh, how we are using computer vision almost every day for OCR, which is nothing but optical character recognition, reading characters from an image. Then we have autonomous cars like Tesla, where deep learning algorithms in computer vision are being put to use. And then we have face detection, which we have on our phones for unlocking our phones. Okay, and then image description examples also will look at. There are some pre-trained models in this area. We'll try to which are being open sourced by companies like Tesla and Facebook. We'll look at how these models are trained and the architecture behind these models, and how we can further take these models and further put to use for our customized tasks. So this will be the basic structure of curriculum. Okay, as we go along with the course, we, if needed, we might make some changes to tailor it to the audience. Okay, this is about the curriculum. Okay, so if you have any questions about the curriculum, or if you feel that any topic is left out, or if you want to include any topic in the curriculum, you can ask your questions. You can also put your questions in the chat box so that I can answer. Okay, we have many attendees on the call. So guys, if you have any questions about the curriculum with respect to the job you're currently in, or if you want to pursue a job in data science area, you can ask about the same, and I'll try to answer that in the best way. Okay. So for the second part of the session, I'll try to I'll try to help you understand how we do things at SSB. Okay, so how we'll be learning the concepts at SSB, and so that you can also understand our teaching style. So this is just a demo session about one of the regression algorithms. The terminology might be completely new to you. Okay, so so it's okay if you don't understand some parts of it. It's completely okay if you have never heard this before. Okay, so these terms might sound alien to you. So the only you have to remember that the only objective of this session is to just familiarize with you, you know that teaching style at SSB. So before jumping into the uh, session, I'll just give you a brief introduction about my work so far. Okay. So I've been working in the data science area for the last 5 years. Okay, with a professional experience of more than 4 years. Okay, so I've been working with a market research company as a data scientist of late. Previously, I've worked with banking and financial organizations as well, in different capacities. Before that, I pursued my graduation from Indian Institute of Technology where I worked on a couple of research projects on NLP and computer vision. Also, I'd taken up some courses on probability and statistics, machine learning, and advanced machine learning. So how this course is different from other courses that you see in the market is that we'll try to explain the theory, uh, and we'll also have a practice sessions in parallel. Okay, so we won't be using PowerPoint slides as part of our sessions. So what we'll be doing is we'll be using something called as Jupyter Notebooks, which is nothing but an IDE for Python, where we'll have theoretical concepts, and also parallelly will be coding the same thing, coding the theoretical concepts in Python, so that we can understand how theory is being put into use in practice. Okay. So as you can see on the screen, we have theory and coding at the same time in these Jupyter notebooks. Okay, so when we try to understand any particular topic, what we'll be doing is we'll be explaining you the theory first, and then immediately after that, we'll try to see how we apply this, in the real-time scenario. And we'll be picking up multiple data sets as part of this course. We'll be working on different data sets and we'll try to solve different problems using machine learning. The other thing which sets us apart from other courses is most of in most of these courses, what you'll see is called as ideal data sets. Okay, so when you are dealing with a particular data, when you're dealing with a particular data, uh, the data sets that they provide you are mostly very clean and in a structured format. But when it comes to real-time applications, or when you go to your first data science job, the data sets you'll see will be far different from what you get in training courses, because in real life scenario, mostly data is unstructured and very messy and clean. Okay. So what we're trying to do is as with the object of getting you prepared for your first data science job. Okay, we'll be trying to simulate the data sets that you see in real life. Also, we'll be trying to simulate the real world data sets, and also try to gather data sets from different companies in the data science field. Okay. So we have a question from one of the attendees. So what do you expect from the applicants in terms of coding experience? Okay. So as part of my experience, I've trained many software professionals as well at work and also at other companies. Okay. So as part of that, we are trained both software engineers and business analysts also. Okay, business analysts are people who don't have any prior experience with coding. Okay, so they are more about domain knowledge and domain expertise. Okay, so like I said, you need both coding, statistics basics, and also domain expertise for data science. Okay, so if you have either of these, you can become data scientist by learning the other two. Okay, so even if you're coming from a domain, if you're coming from a different background, and not not coding background, and but if you have domain expertise on something, you can still become a data scientist. Okay, so that's the reason why we have Python and R coding modules as part of our course. Okay, and I would also like to mention that Python is the most easiest coding language that we have. If you look at the programming languages that are available in the market right now. Okay, so we'll be mostly using Python throughout our course, and also in the data science applications nowadays, Python is being used by almost 90% data scientists. Okay, and the others use R, because in Python we have more support from the developers community, and we have more open source packages for implementing our algorithms. So to answer this question, even if you don't have any prior coding experience, we'll be covering R and Python coding basics in the in the sessions. And as we implement our machine learning algorithms using Python as part of this course, you'll be getting a lot of hands-on experience with Python, and we'll make sure you're ready for your first data science job by the end of this course. And as part of this course, we'll also help you build a portfolio of projects on data science, okay, which you'll be uh, projecting on your resume, and which is what will help you get your first data science job. Okay. I hope I answered that, Dhwani. We'll be taking questions at the end of this session again, so you can mention the same in the chat box if you have any. So we'll just look at one of the basic regression algorithms called as simple linear regression. Okay. So in this session, I'll try to explain how an algorithm works and how we'll use the algorithm to perform any tasks using data. So here we have a flowchart explaining any algorithm in machine learning works. Okay. So first we have a learning algorithm, okay, any machine learning algorithm. We provide a training set to that. Okay, and then we give an input variable. We generally specify it as X. Okay, and then we'll try to predict something. Okay, we'll have one output which is generally specified as Y. Okay. So, like I mentioned before, if you are trying to predict anything which is continuous in nature, when I say continuous, it means that it is numeric in nature. It is called as a regression problem. Okay. So, in this case, we're trying to pick up a problem where using the area of a house, we'll be trying to predict the price of the house in lakhs. Okay. So here we have a bunch of data. Okay, so let's say this data was collected, in Hyderabad for the last 3 or 4 years, where you have area in square yards, and then you have a column for price, in lakhs. That's it. So here we have four columns in our data: area, age, distance, and price. Okay, where your area tells your area of the flat in square yards, and then age is in months. Okay, so it tells you how many months house your house is, and then you have distance, which is nothing but distance of your house. Let's say from the amenities or from the main road in meters. Okay, and then you have price in lakhs. Okay. So using these columns, we'll be trying to predict price. Okay. So as I mentioned before, we won't be just looking at the theory concept. We'll also be seeing a bit of Python code as part of this session. Just to show you how our lessons will be. Okay. So if you don't have any prior experience with Python, you can completely ignore this Python code chunks. So we'll be you will be using Python to play around with the data. So as part of that, we'll be using some functions that we have in Python, where so initially I've read this data a CSV file into one of the data structures called as data frame. Okay, this is how it looks, and then we can see some characteristics of this data frame, like shape, which tells us how many rows we have in a data frame and how many columns we have. So we can see that it has 200 rows and 4 columns. as we saw here. And then using a function called describe, we can see how many number of values are present in each column, and the minimum and maximum values in each column. Okay, so in area column, we can see that we have 200 values. Okay, and then so we have minimum and maximum values for each column as well. After that, we'll be using info method to see if we have any missing values in our column. Okay, so here in Python, we call the missing values or any corrupt data as null values. Okay, so we have total 200 entries. Out of that, we can see that all are non-null values. So when you say non-null, it's not missing, or it's in the correct format. So fortunately, we don't have any null values in our data. Okay. So then using one of the packages in Python, we'll try to understand the dependency of each column with the other. If you look at this particular plot, you can see that when you plot your price and area columns, on a two-dimensional chart, you can see that as your area is increasing, your price is also increasing in most cases. Okay, so for an area of around 100 square yards, you have a price of close to 10 lakhs. Okay, but when you go to 300 square yards, you have price varying from 12 lakhs to 25 lakhs. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll only discuss the simple linear regression. Okay. The difference between simple linear regression and linear regression is that in simple linear regression, we'll be using only one column, which is area, to predict the price. In linear regression, you can use multiple columns to predict the price of the flat. So it can also be called as multivariable linear regression. So then we have something called as correlation plot here. So what correlation plot tells you is how much does one parameter vary when you change the other. Okay, so I'll explain you what it is. So here you have price versus area. Okay, where you have a value of 0.78 for the correlation. Okay. What correlation tells you is how much is the dependence of price on the area. Okay, these correlation values range from -1 to 1. Okay, when the value is less than 0, negative, it means that when you change one parameter, the other parameter decreases. Okay, when the value is above 0, it means that when you increase one, the other will also increase. So as we have seen here, as we are increasing the area, the price of the flat is also increasing. So in this case, the value is 0.78 for the correlation between price and area. It means that when you increase your area by 1 square yard, so there's a chance of your price being increased by 0.78 lakhs. Okay, you can try to understand it like that. So like I said, we'll be using only area to predict our price, because we can see that it has high dependence on the area. So the maximum value is 1, and here we have almost zero point 0.8 for price versus area. So we'll be only using price and area to apply our regression algorithm. So what we'll be doing is we'll only be taking these two columns in a separate data frame. Okay. Then we'll jump right into the regression algorithm. So we have a bunch of jargons here. Okay, first is hypothesis function. Okay, we generally represent it as h of x. So what hypothesis function tells you is that in linear regression, hypothesis function tells you that you can represent your dependent variable price, you know, as uh, as a line which involves your area. Okay, let's say you have XY graph here, okay, and I'm trying to represent price on the y-axis and area on your x-axis. So your hypothesis function tells that you can represent your data, entire data, using one single line, which is in the form of mx plus c. Okay. So if you can recall from your plus one and plus two, a line can be represented in the form of y equal to mx plus c, where your m is called slope of the line, which basically represents the inclination of the line with your x-axis, and c is called your y-intercept, which is nothing but this particular part. Okay. So hypothesis function in linear regression tells that you can represent an area in this form, where you have price as y and area as x, and so you can basically write it as price equal to m into area plus c. Okay. So our objective here is to find out what are m and c, because we from our data we already have price and area. Okay, so the objective of the regression algorithm is to find out this particular line which can represent our data. So by end of this tutorial, we'll be finding out these M and C values which perfectly describe our data using one single line. Clear so far? If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to stop me and ask. I'm more than happy to explain it, again. Okay. So here we'll be doing a small task before jumping right into the algorithm.
Hi, Harry, this is Divya. Will it be easy for a non-programmer to do all this?
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
Will it be easy for a non-programming background person to do all these?
Yes, sure. Uh, So Divya, like I've told before, so even if you're coming from a non-coding background, we'll be covering all these, we'll be covering all this Python code as part of our Python module. Okay, and while we go through these sessions, in almost every alternative session, we'll give you small coding assignments in the beginning, and also when we learn the machine learning algorithms, we'll be giving you small data sets where you can play around with the data using Python. Okay, so uh, if you have any difficulty in picking up Python, we'll be helping you as we go along with the course. So for now, you can try to ignore this Python code. Okay. So once we cover the Python coding module, you'll be able to understand whatever you're seeing here. Okay. So we'll make sure of that by end of the Python module, by giving you multiple coding assignments. And so we're expecting, initially we're expecting at least 8 to 10 hours from your side to invest in this course every week. Okay, and I'll be discussing the timings, etc., and the assignment schedules, etc., by at the end of this discussion. Okay, and I hope that I answered your question, Divya.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, so coming back to regression. So what we'll do initially is, let's do a small hit and trial method to see if we can get our line, using some random values. Okay, so you can ignore this part of code here. So this is just to show you, how our data is represented on a 2D plot. Okay, so what we did is we came up with some random line in the form mx plus c, where I've taken values 0.05 for m and zero point 0.5 for c. Okay. So as you can see, this red line, it represents this line equation 0.05x plus 0.5. Okay. So you can see that this line is far from our data. Okay, it doesn't really represent our data in a best possible way. Okay. Let's say I take some other value, like 0.05 plus x plus 5. Okay, So you can see that our line, is passing through our data. Okay, and if I just uh, try to represent this data with this line, the line ideally should pass through the center of this entire data, which is what our regression algorithm will help us find out. So our objective is to find the best values for this m and c. Okay, even if I came up with some random values here, so this red line is not at the best fit for our data. Okay, this line does not represent our data in the best possible way. So using regression, we'll be finding out the best possible values for m and c. Okay. As you might have observed here, when I change these m and c values, okay, our line has moved close to our data. Previously, it is far from most of the points in the data, but when I took some new values, when I increase this y-intercept, you can see that with almost same inclination, our line is passing through most of the points in the data. To understand, how far our line is from the data, we're defining a new metric called error. So what this error tells us is how far is your line from your data points. So we have learned in our plus one and plus two, okay, how to find out distance of point from a line. Okay. So we don't have to do it manually here. We have Python functions to implement that. Okay. So this error is nothing but the distance of your points from your line. So I'll tell you how we're going to use this error to find out our M and C values. So just an extrapolation of error is called mean square error, which is a metric that we'll be using in regression. It's also called as MSE. Okay, and in the regression context, we'll be calling it as cost function. Okay, so you can just remember this terminology for now. So what we have here is called as mean square error, which is nothing but sum of distances of all these points to your red line, and then you'll just try to compute mean of all these distances. Okay, so what we'll be doing in Python is we'll be taking each point, and then we'll be calculating the distance of this point from this line, and then once we have distances for all these points, all these blue points from your red line, we have 200 points in the data. So we'll sum up all these distances and divide by 200. So by that you'll be getting the average value or mean value. So that's what we have in this formula here. So don't let the representation scare you. Okay, so this is nothing but distance of your data set from your approximation, which is your red line. You have squared up all the values and then divided it with the number of samples to get your average error. So in this regression context, it's called as cost function. Okay. So I hope it is clear so far. If you have missed me anywhere, you can immediately call me out so that I can explain it again. Okay. So whatever we have seen here is represented in a Python code here. So like I told you before, we'll be learning the basic concepts like this, and then we'll be trying to implement it in Python code here. So you can I'll try to map the equation with the code here. Okay. So here you have predictor value and actual value here. So we have the same thing in the Python code as well, where you have predictions and your actual value y, and then you're taking the difference and using a function called square in the NumPy package of Python. You'll be squaring up the difference values, and then you're summing up all the values using a different method, and then you're dividing it by the number of samples. Yep. Okay. So it's as simple as you see it here. And once you learn the basics in Python, it won't be very difficult for you to implement these small functions in Python. Okay. As we have seen before, when our data is far from our representation line, okay, the error will be very high. All these points are lying far away from this line, so initially our error will be very high. So our objective is to decrease this distance as much as possible and bring our line close to the data. So the error is as minimum as possible, or we have the most minimal error. So that's what we'll be doing here as part of this regression algorithm. So what helps us do this thing is called as gradient descent algorithm, okay, which basically gives us a structured way of decreasing error to get our M and C values. Okay, so so I wanted to just recall derivation derivative function from your plus two. Okay, which is nothing but your d by dx, if you can recall. Okay, as when we actually discuss regression, we'll be having a small discussion about derivative functions. We'll be covering the same in statistics and probability basics also. So in calculus, we'll be using derivative functions and integrals as part of our machine learning algorithms. So we'll be having a small starter for calculus also. So for now, we'll just be using this d by dx function, which is nothing but your differentiation of any equation. Okay. So what we'll be doing here is we'll be representing this cost function j of theta. So it's represented as j of theta in a graph. Okay. So if you can see at this representation, it's also a quadratic equation or a second degree equation. When you represent this second degree equation, it looks something like this and in a graph. So for now, you can just trust me and believe this. Okay, this quadratic equation looks like a graph when you plot it in 2D. Okay, so what gradient descent algorithm tells us is that, okay, initially your cost will be very high. Okay, so on this particular curve, so you'll be standing somewhere at this point. Okay, so you can see that the value of j of theta on this y-axis is very high initially. Okay, and it also says that so there is a minimum point for this gradient descent curve, okay, which is lying somewhere around here. Okay. Our objective is to decrease our error as much as possible. Okay. This is the most minimal value that this curve can attain. Okay. So our objective is to initially start from here and go to this point. So when you reach this point, you can say that this is the minimum value for your j of theta, which is nothing but your cost function. So how we'll be doing this is we'll be starting from here with a high value of gradient cost function, and then we'll be taking small steps on this curve like this until you reach this particular point. Okay, so how do we do this in the form of a mathematical equation is represented by this particular equation. Okay, so we'll come back to what this equation is saying. So first we'll try to understand gradient descent algorithm with a small analogy. Okay, so in our childhood we used to play with slides, right? So when you sit on the top of a slide, what you do is you move along the slide and you reach the bottom point of the slide. Okay, then we used to go back to the top and then slide again. So that's what is basically happening in this gradient descent algorithm. This, you can imagine this as as a curved slide, and you are passing along the slide to reach its bottommost point. Okay. So here we do it, in form of small steps. Hmm. instead of going directly from this point to this point. And to stick to the curve, we'll be using slope of the curve at each point. Okay, we have seen before that slope of any line or a curve is represented by uh, dy by dx or delta y by delta x. So here in this case, whenever you try to draw a tangent to the curve, okay, tangent is nothing but a line drawn to curve at any point which is touching the curve at only one point. Okay, if you draw a tangent at this point of the curve, it looks like this line. Okay, so what this tangent gives us is the direction in which the curve is moving. Okay, so when you are at this point, if you try to you know make a tangent, it gives you the direction which you have to move along with the curve. So tangent slope is represented by dy by dx. So here in this case we have j of theta on y-axis. So we're representing slope of the curve as d by d theta of j of theta. Okay. So instead of m and c values, we have a generic representation here called as theta naught and theta one. Okay. So you can call theta naught and theta one as m and c. Okay. Just to represent it in a mathematical equation, we gave these two names, theta naught and theta one. Okay. So when you put m into theta naught plus theta one in this equation, this entire thing will be in the form of in the form of theta naught plus something plus theta naught square, etc. So you can say that this function j of theta, will be based on theta naught and theta one values. So we'll be differentiating this curve j of theta at each point with respect to theta naught and theta one. Okay, so that you can find the slope of this curve at each point. And then what we're doing is we are taking small value called alpha or learning rate, which helps us move across the curve for a small step. Okay, so you can see the same thing here. So this j values are nothing but 0 and 1. So we have theta naught and theta 1, two values. Theta naught is your m and theta 1 is your c. Don't forget that. So what we'll be doing is we'll be subtracting, or let's just say we'll be changing each of these theta naught and theta 1 values in each step, okay, by a specific parameter. Okay. So this is your small quantity which you are changing in both your m and c values in each step, which is represented here. Okay. So this alpha is called as learning rate. Generally, we take alpha values from 0 to 1. Okay. So we'll be taking small alpha values to make a small movement across this curve. Okay. And like I told you before, this d by d theta represents slope of the line. Okay. So typically what you're doing is you're moving across a small part of this curve towards your bottommost point, and then you're changing this theta naught and theta 1 values by alpha into slope of that curve. Okay, I hope it is clear so far why we got these equations. So again, I'm telling you, don't let the representation scare you. Okay, so once you understand what these different you know notation, what these different variables represent, it's very easy to understand the equations. So this is the first thing that you have to remember. When it comes to uh, any mathematical equations in general, and specifically in machine learning algorithms, you should not get scared of because of the mathematical equations. Okay, so once you try to break it into parts and try to understand what these variables are representing, it's very easy to understand the equation. Okay, so I'll be just reiterating again. Here we are changing our MNC values by a small value in each step. Okay. So for the calculation purpose, we are simplifying this j of theta cos function. Okay, so once we differentiate this j of theta, apparently it comes down to this value. which is nothing but your approximation value h of x, your hypothesis function mx plus c, minus y, which is your actual value, into your input value x. So in our case, y is our price of the flat, okay, and x is the area. So we can substitute the same thing here, okay, and it becomes something like this. So in each step, we are finding out error for all the samples, all the m samples, divided by the number of samples m, and you get the average error. So you take differentiation of the value of so you take the differentiation of the curve at that point, and then subtract that value multiplied by alpha from your parameters m and c at each step. So we'll be doing this step for multiple times, okay, as you have seen in this curve. We'll be doing these steps for multiple times until you reach this endpoint. Okay. So how do we know when we reach this endpoint is, once you reach this endpoint, even if you keep doing these iterations, your cost function won't change much. Okay. So we'll see how that works. Before going to that, we just represented this gradient descent algorithm in form of a Python code here. Okay, so this entire equation is coded in Python this way. See how simple it looks. So we're just updating the values of theta with this particular small value. You have alpha here, which is learning rate, and then we have 1 by m here, which you can see here. Okay, and then you have x into, and then you have x into your prediction minus actual value. So we have the same thing here, x into prediction minus actual value. So this is giving us the updated values of theta and theta 1, theta naught and theta 1. So that is what we are getting here. So what we'll be doing when implementing is, we'll just store all these theta naught and theta 1 values in each step in a matrix in Python. So we'll proceed and apply the gradient descent algorithm here. So we have our input and output. Input is your x, which is nothing but area of the flat, and your output is the prediction value, which is nothing but your price. So we'll be starting off with a learning rate alpha of 0.0001. Okay, I'll tell you why we are taking such a low value for alpha. And then we have 10,000 iterations or 10,000 steps we'll be doing when we're moving from this point to this point. In diagram, it looks like 5 to 6 steps, but in reality it actually takes a lot of steps to from this point to this point, as we have a very small value for alpha here. Okay, so we'll be initializing the algorithm, or we'll be starting off with some random values for theta naught and theta 1. Okay, so there is a function in Python for giving out random values. So I just started the algorithm with some any random values for theta. Okay, so this gives me two values for theta, one for theta naught and one for theta 1. Okay. And like I said before, you can ignore this Python coding part. So we'll be passing these two initial values to our algorithm, and we'll be doing this step and updating our theta naught and theta 1 values in each step. And at the end of the gradient descent algorithm, we'll be having two final values for theta naught and theta 1 like this. Okay. So apparently theta naught, the best value for theta naught is 8.044, and the best value for theta 1 is 0.042. Okay, and your final cost function value is 5.386. We'll see how that came. Okay. So I'll just plot the line y equal to mx plus c with these values, and it looks something like this. You can see that now the line passes through the center of our data, and almost covers all the points at the at the center of the data. So this is the best approximation for our data in the form of m into area plus some C error. So what we did is in each step we tried to plot our j of theta cost function value, and it looks something like this. So you have your j of theta on y-axis, and you have number of steps or number of iterations on x-axis. So initially you can see that the value is somewhere close to 2,50,000. Okay, as we have 200 points initially for all the 200 points, so it's somewhere around 2,50,000. Okay, and as we proceed with our number of iterations, it's decreasing. So it basically means that our error is decreasing in each step, and after a point you can see that it comes down to small value, and after that it's not changing much. It's almost constant. You can see the same in the matrix in which we have stored our cost function values. So initially it is somewhere around 2,50,000. So 2.67 to 10 power 5. And after a point, it came down to 42.18. Okay. And after some 10-15 iterations, you can see that the value is not changing much after this point. Okay. So it's hardly changing by 0.01 or 0.04. So after that it almost stays constant. So when you reach a point like this, you'll know that you come to the bottommost point of your cost function curve. So you can stop the algorithm here. So even though just for safety we take more number of iterations, it's not necessary that you have to perform all the steps, all the 10,000 steps. You can just end your algorithm after 10 or 15 steps, once you see that there is no much change in your cost function value. Okay. So I've mentioned that we have taken value of alpha as 0.0001. Okay. So why we took such less value for alpha is, um, if we can recall the equation that we were using for cost function here. So let's say have some value of 5 in my theta naught. Okay, and theta 1 has some value of 2 or something. Okay, and if I'm decreasing this entire value from 5, let's say if this came down to be some 10,000. Okay, if I'm decreasing 10,000 from this small value, I'll be getting a huge negative value, right? But we don't want that in gradient descent algorithm. So if you represent the same thing on a graph, it looks something like this. When you have a small value for alpha, as we discussed before, we'll be taking small steps across the curve to reach this point. Okay, but when you increase the value for alpha, there is a chance of overshooting. So this process you see here is called overshooting, which is nothing but decreasing very high value from your initial theta naught and theta 1 values, where you'll be going to the opposite side of the curve, and then when you try to decrease another huge value from it, you might go to the other side of the curve, because the slope of the curve is changing here. Here you might have a negative slope, and here you might have a positive slope. Okay, so once you decrease a huge value and then increase it again by a huge value, might be moving across the curve like this, randomly shooting to different points in the curve. So if you keep doing this, you will never reach the bottommost point of the curve. So it means that when you overshoot, your gradient descent algorithm might not converge forever. So that is the reason why we take small values for alpha, so that we stick to the curve and move along with the curve. So we also did something else to understand how our graph is working. So you can ignore this coding part here. We'll come back to this later, as part of our linear regression session in our course. So when you look at this graph, you can see that this is an initial representation of our line. when we started with some random values. So initially this was the line, okay, and as we perform our gradient descent algorithm, you can see that our line is moving closer to the data. So here these blue points that you see at the bottom are our data, and initially the line is far from our data, and as we perform gradient descent, we'll be closing on to the data, and at the end of the algorithm, your last line is almost inclined to your data. So that is what we are ideally doing in gradient descent algorithm. And in this graph, you can see as we move close to the data, our error is also decreasing parallelly. So just to understand, how this algorithm is coded in Python, we implemented it from scratch. Okay, but Python also gives us a package called scalar, which is nothing but a collection of some functions, in which we also have this linear regression function given by Python, where you can just pass your input and output values from your data, and just call this function with these two values, and it will give you your theta naught and theta 1 values, which are nothing but your m and c. So here we have coefficient, which is nothing but your slope, uh, which came out to be 0.04, and your intercept c came out to be 7.03. So we can recall the values that we got from the scratch method, where we coded everything from scratch. So here we got 8.04 and 0.042. Okay, so you can see that these are almost pretty much close values. If we maybe if we do it for more iterations, you might be attaining these most optimal values, which are 7.03 for the intercept and 0.047 for the slope. And if you plot this line on the graph, it looks something like this. Okay? So the objective of a linear regression algorithm, if we recall, was to represent the entire data in the form of a line y equal to mx plus c, which passes through the data by covering most points, which means that we are representing this entire data with one single line with some approximate error. Okay, so you can't make your line pass through all the points in your data. So what you do is you try to come up with the best fit for the data, or best line which can pass through most number of points in your data and can represent your data in the form of y equal to mx plus c in a better way. So uh, once you have this line, if you recall from our hypothesis function, we try to represent price in the form of m into area plus c. So once we have this m and c values now, so if I give you area, you can predict the price by substituting m and c values in this equation and putting area value here. So we did the same thing here. Once we got this m and c values, we predicted all the values for the prices of the flats using the given input areas. So initially we had these two columns where we had area of the flat and price of the flat. So now we uh, predicted the price of the flat using this area, and you can see that it's almost close to the actual values. So here you have y, which is nothing but your price, and here you have your h of x, your predicted values. So there's always some amount of error. Like I said, you can't represent all your points in the data with a line. So once we build this model, we'll be using this model to predict price of a flat, for a new flat. If you are given some new area of a flat, let's say if you are given some new value of let's say 180. Okay, so you're trying to predict price of the flat with an area of 180 square yards. So it comes down to 15.62 lakhs, which you can see from our data as well. To see how good our model is, we have two metrics. One is mean squared error, one is root mean squared error. And yeah, this mean squared error is same as what we've seen before. Okay, so our cost function also represents if our model is good or not. Okay, if this value is very less, this mean square error value is very less, you can say that your your model has is performing very well in terms of predicting the price from the area. So we have something else called root mean square error, which is nothing but square root of your mean square error. The reason why we took root mean square error instead of mean square error is, so some points might lie very far from your line. Okay, so because of only these bunch of points that you see here, so only these bunch of 4 or 5 points can increase your mean squared error value by a huge value. Okay, so then it might give you a notion that your model is not performing well, but we can ignore some of these cases which are lying far from our entire data. Okay, and that is the reason why, to minimize that effect of those points lying away from the data, we take square root of the values. So when you take square root, this this high value of mean squared error is avoided, and this effect is minimized. So we have more metrics for regression, but for now we're just discussing these two, MSE and RMSE. So this is how you build your first basic regression algorithm. So we had four jargons here. One is hypothesis function, and the second is learning rate. Third is gradient descent, and then finally you have mean squared error and root mean squared error. So these are the four jargons that you have tried to understand in regression algorithm today. I hope everyone understood the essence of regression algorithm here. Even if you didn't understand the mathematical equations and Python code, that's totally okay, because we haven't covered our Python basics yet. So if you have any questions on the regression algorithm we have covered so far, or if you have if you have any anything that needs to be changed in terms of the teaching style, you can let me know. As part of this course, we are we are we're trying to be very flexible to the change our way of teaching, or the way we solve problems, so that we can get best of our time. That brings us to the end of regression algorithm discussion. So if you have any questions about regression algorithm or data science in general, or job prospects, or about this course curriculum, you can ask me now. We still have 15 minutes to cover Q&A. So initially, as a part of the course, we are expecting, like I said, 8 to 10 hours from this course, and every alternative day, or once in 2 days, we'll be giving out small assignments. It can be coding assignments, or dealing with the data set, and we'll be taking 6 sessions in a week, starting from Monday to Saturday, and each session will be for 1.5 hours. And the timings will be decided in accordance to the schedules of all the attendees in the session. So Sunday will be a week off, and you can take that time to work on your assignments, or revise the content that I've covered in the previous week. So if you have any questions about the course timings and all, you can reach out to Mandeep after the call. If you have someone, if you have one attendee in the name of administrator, I'm just wondering. who has joined with this name. And sir, can you provide your details? The administrator is joined. Okay. Moving along. So if you have any questions about data science in general, you can send out your questions to Manideep, and I'll try to answer them and get back to you later. And any questions about the course can also be posted out to Mandeep after this session. He'll be reaching out back to you for taking the feedback. Okay. Uh, then I assume there are no questions from the attendees for now. So thanks for joining this session. Thanks for taking time out on Sunday evening and spending time with us. Uh, like I mentioned before, you can reach out to Manadeep for any questions, and he'll be forwarding your questions to me, and I'll try to answer them in the best possible way. Thank you, guys. Thanks for joining.